The crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead as I stood in the center of the Ashworth Mansion's grand ballroom, surrounded by Boston's elite. My engagement ring caught the light, throwing tiny rainbows across my champagne glass. Everything was perfect, until I saw Marcus's face. He was striding toward me, his jawline tight with anger, holding his phone like a weapon. Behind him, his mother Victoria watched with barely concealed satisfaction. "You lied to me," he said, his voice carrying across the murmuring crowd. "All this time you've been lying." My name is Emma Crawford, and at 28 I was about to learn just how quickly a perfect life could unravel. "Marcus," I said quietly, "what are you talking about?" He thrust his phone in my face. On the screen was my old LinkedIn profile, the one I deleted months ago. Stanford Business School, a master's in finance. You didn't even finish community college. The room went silent. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me, judging, waiting for my response. My hands started to shake. "I can explain." "Explain what?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "How you convince everyone you were some brilliant financial analyst when you're really just a secretary. How you wormed your way into my life, into my family's company." Victoria Ashworth stepped forward, her designer heels clicking on the marble floor. "I knew something wasn't right about you," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "No one from your background could possibly be what you claimed." I looked around the room, at the faces of people who'd supposedly become my friends over the past year. They all wore the same expression, a mixture of shock and smug vindication. They'd never really accepted me, the outsider who'd somehow caught the heir to Ashworth Investments. "Marcus, please," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Let's talk about this privately." "Oh, now you want privacy." He grabbed my left hand roughly, pulling at my engagement ring. "After humiliating me in front of everyone? After making me look like a fool?" I yanked my hand back, but he'd already gotten the ring off. Tiffany's finest 5 carats of flawless diamond, now looking oddly small in his clenched fist. "The wedding's off," he announced to the room. "I can't marry someone who built our entire relationship on lies." He turned back to me, his handsome face twisted with contempt. "Did you really think you could pull this off? That no one would discover the truth?" The truth, if only he knew what that really meant. "While you've been playing dress up," he continued, "pretending to be something you're not, I've been seeing someone else. Someone real. Someone who actually belongs in this world." A tall blonde stepped out of the crowd. Amanda Porter, head of client relations at Ashworth Investments. She took Marcus's arm, a triumphant smile on her face. "Amanda has an actual MBA," Marcus said, "from Harvard. She understands business, understands our world. Unlike you." I stood there, feeling the weight of every judgment, every whispered comment, every sideways glance I'd endured over the past year. But underneath the humiliation, something else was building, something that felt a lot like freedom. "You're right," I said quietly. Marcus blinked, clearly thrown by my calm acceptance. "What?" "I did lie. I took off my shoes, Jimmy shoes that had cost a month's salary, and held them in one hand. I'm not who you thought I was." Victoria's triumphant smile faltered slightly. This wasn't the hysterical reaction they'd expected. "But neither are you," I continued. "You're not the brilliant businessman you pretend to be. You're just a trust fund kid playing with daddy's money." Marcus's face reddened. "How dare you?" "How dare I?" I laughed, and this time it was genuine. "You know what's funny? I actually felt guilty about my lies, about pretending to be less than I am to protect my real work. But you? You've never felt guilty about anything in your life, have you?" Confusion crossed his face. "What are you talking about?" I smiled, thinking about the email I'd received just that morning, the one confirming that everything was in place. "You'll find out soon enough." With that, I turned and walked toward the door, my bare feet silent on the marble floor. Behind me, I could hear Marcus's voice, higher now with uncertainty. "Where are you going?" "Home," I said without turning around. "To my real life." The drive back to my apartment was surreal. The city lights blurred past as I remembered how this had all started 1 year ago. I built my company, Phoenix Capital, from nothing, working my way up from actual secretary to CEO through sheer determination and a knack for spotting market trends others missed. But I kept myself anonymous, using a series of proxies and holding companies to hide my identity. In my experience, being a young woman in finance meant constantly fighting to be taken seriously. Then came the rumor that Ashworth Investments was vulnerable. They'd overleveraged themselves on some bad investments, and their old-school approach was failing in the modern market. They were ripe for a takeover. I needed to verify the rumors to understand the company from the inside. So I created a new identity, the ambitious but slightly fraudulent Emma Crawford, who faked her credentials to get a job as an executive assistant at Ashworth. What I hadn't counted on was Marcus. He'd noticed me my first week, asked me to lunch, and seemed charmed by my supposed attempts to better myself through night classes. One lunch led to dinner, dinner led to dating, and suddenly I was engaged to the heir of the company I was planning to acquire. I told myself I'd end it before it went too far, that I'd find a way to let him down gently once I had the information I needed. But part of me had actually started to care for him, to hope that maybe he'd understand when the truth came out. Tonight had proven how foolish that hope had been. I climbed the stairs to my apartment, my real apartment, not the modest one Marcus thought I lived in. Inside, I kicked off my fancy dress and pulled on comfortable clothes, then sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. A new email was waiting. Miss Crawford, all preparations are complete. We can begin the acquisition process whenever you give the word. James Morton, Legal Department. I thought about Marcus's face when he'd thrown my lies in my face, about Victoria's smug satisfaction, about Amanda's triumphant smile. I began to type, Mr. Morton, begin immediately, and make sure the initial offer comes through our Singapore office. I want the Ashworths to have no idea who's really buying their company until it's too late. Emma. I sat back, looking at the city skyline through my window. Marcus thought he'd expose my lies tonight, thought he'd put me in my place. He had no idea that in 6 months he'd be working for me, if I decided to keep him on at all. My phone buzzed with a text from my chief operating officer, Lisa. Saw the society page update about the engagement. You okay? I smiled, thinking about what was to come. Better than okay, I replied. Everything's going according to plan. I closed my laptop and walked to the window. Below, Boston's financial district glittered like a carpet of stars. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably celebrating with Amanda, thinking he dodged a bullet by exposing his gold-digging fiancé. Let him celebrate. In 6 months, he'd learn what it really meant to lie about who you are. 6 months passed like a perfectly executed business plan. I sat in my private office on the 45th floor, reviewing the final acquisition documents for Ashworth Investments. Everything had gone exactly as planned. Our Singapore office had made the initial offer, followed by increasingly aggressive moves through various subsidiaries. The Ashworths never saw the pattern until it was too late. They're here, Lisa announced from my doorway. In the main conference room. I checked my reflection in the window. Power suit perfect, hair elegant but understated. Not a trace of the woman Marcus had humiliated half a year ago. How does he look? I asked, gathering my papers. Lisa smirked. Like someone who just realized he's lost his family's company and has no idea who he lost it to. The walk to the conference room felt like destiny. Through the glass walls, I could see them. Marcus, his father Richard Ashworth, Victoria, and their team of lawyers. They all wore the same expression of barely contained panic. I paused outside the door, remembering Marcus's words from that night. Someone real. Someone who actually belongs in this world. Well, time to show him just how real I could be. I pushed open the door, and the room fell silent. Marcus's face went from confused to shocked to pale with recognition. Victoria grabbed his arm so hard her knuckles went white. Good morning, I said, taking my place at the head of the table. I'm Emma Crawford, CEO of Phoenix Capital. I believe we have some papers to sign. This is impossible, Marcus sputtered. You were a secretary? I smiled. Actually, that was the only real lie I told. Well, that and the community college story. I do have an MBA from London Business School, not Stanford. I just kept it quiet while I was researching your company. Richard Ashworth leaned forward, his face red. This is some kind of joke. We're not selling our company to a woman you thought was a social climbing fraud. I opened my folder, sliding documents across the table. Actually, you are. The board approved the sale last week. These are just the final formalities. Victoria found her voice. Marcus, did you know about this? Did you tell her things about the company when you were? He didn't tell me anything I didn't already know. I cut in. Your company's weaknesses were obvious to anyone paying attention. Overleveraged positions, outdated investment strategies, a complete failure to adapt to modern markets. I looked at Marcus. Though your son's tendency to brag about board meetings over dinner did provide some useful confirmation. Marcus slumped in his chair, the full weight of what had happened finally hitting him. The whole time you were playing me. Not initially, I admitted. At first, I just needed to verify some rumors about Ashworth's financial position. But then you and your mother made it so clear that someone like me couldn't possibly belong in your world. Well, I decided to show you exactly what someone like me could do. This is outrageous, Richard blustered. Our lawyers will. Your lawyers have already reviewed everything, I cut in smoothly. The sale is legal, binding, and final. The only question is whether you want to make this transition smooth or difficult. I turned to Marcus. Remember Amanda, your real businesswoman? She's been working for me the whole time. Those client lists she's been compiling, that data she's been analyzing, all feeding directly to Phoenix Capital. The look of betrayal on his face was almost comical. Almost, you'll never get away with this, Victoria hissed. Once people know. Know what? I asked calmly. That you lost your company to the woman you publicly humiliated. That your son's ex-fiancé outmaneuvered your entire family? Please feel free to share that story. I'm sure the financial press would love it. The room fell silent. Even the lawyers looked uncomfortable. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. Ashworth Investments will become a subsidiary of Phoenix Capital. Your clients will see no disruption in service. Your employees' jobs are secure, except for the senior management team, of course. They'll be restructured. Marcus's face went even paler. You're firing me? Think of it as a learning opportunity, I said. A chance to start from the bottom, prove yourself on merit rather than birthright. Isn't that what you always claim to respect? The next hour was a blur of signatures and legal formalities. The Ashworths signed everything put in front of them, their fight completely gone. When it was done, when their family century-old company officially belonged to me, I stood up. One last thing, I said, reaching into my bag. I pulled out the engagement ring, the one Marcus had yanked off my finger 6 months ago. I believe this belongs to you. I set it on the table in front of him. Consider it a reminder that appearances can be deceiving. As they filed out of the conference room, Marcus lingered behind. Why? He asked quietly. Why go through all of this? You could have just bought the company. I looked at him for a long moment. You know, the night we met, you told me that the key to success was knowing your true worth. You were right. I just don't think you ever understood what that meant. After they left, Lisa brought in champagne. To the new owner of Ashworth Investments, she said, pouring 2 glasses. I took mine, but didn't drink immediately. You know what the funny thing is? If they just treated me with basic respect, if they hadn't been so convinced that someone like me couldn't possibly belong in their world, I probably would have structured this as a merger instead of a takeover. Their loss, Lisa said firmly. Though I have to ask, any of it real? With Marcus? I thought about it. Parts of it were. I think that's what made it hurt when he showed his true colors. But in the end, he proved exactly why this had to happen. Why companies like Ashworth need to change or die. Later that night, I stood in my office, looking out at the city. The press release would go out in the morning. Phoenix Capital acquires Ashworth Investments in historic deal. There would be speculation about my age, my gender, my qualifications. But none of that mattered anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. I get it now, why you did it. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I didn't respond. Some lessons don't need acknowledgement. Instead, I opened my laptop and began working on plans for Ashworth's restructuring. The company had potential. It just needed new vision, new leadership, new understanding of what really creates value in today's world. As I worked, I thought about that night at the engagement party, about standing barefoot on marble floors while Boston's elite sneered at my supposed deception. They thought they were witnessing my greatest humiliation. Instead, they've been watching the beginning of my greatest triumph. Sometimes I realized the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising so far above those who doubted you that they're forced to look up and see exactly what they missed. The city lights twinkled below, and somewhere out there, a family of Boston blue bloods was coming to terms with the fact that their carefully ordered world had been upended by the very person they'd dismissed as unworthy. I smiled, raised my glass to the skyline, and got back to work. After all, I had a company to run, 2 companies now actually, and this was just the beginning.